Hello again, pre-K friends. Today I'm going to read you a story, one of my very favorite stories. This is called Grasper. Can you guess what it's about? I think it's going to be about this crab. Now, in order for me to read this story, I'm going to wear some reading glasses. I don't know if you've seen me wear these before because I don't usually wear them at school, but they help me read the words the way that they're supposed to be read. Grasper lived deep between the rocks beside the sea, where he spent his days looking for bits of food drifting in with the tide. But with so many others, looking to a scrap of seaweed or nibble of dead fish was all he could hope to find. When one day, Grasper began to feel quite peculiar, almost swollen inside, like he was having a stomach ache, only he felt this way through his entire body. "I feel as if I'm going to burst!" exclaimed the little crab. And he was. Like taking off a coat, now too small for him, Grasper's shell split open along his back, and before he knew it, he had crawled backwards outside himself, or at least what used to be himself. There in front of him was his whole shell, his body, legs, claws, and even his eyes. Whoa, that must be a very strange feeling. The other crabs in the pool saw this and came running, surrounding Grasper. They asked, "How do you feel?" "I can hardly move," cried Grasper. "But I feel wonderful, like a new crab." "What's happened to me?" "Of course you can hardly move," said one. "You've just molted for the first time, and your new shell hasn't hardened yet to help you." "Of course you feel wonderful," said the other. "When a crab's out of his shell, he's out of his mind too." "And that's dangerous," said the third, "since a crab must have both a hard shell and a hard heart to survive. Be careful until your new shell has hardened, Grasper, and don't listen to any new thoughts you might have. You're going to feel like walking out in the open on your new legs. You're going to want to see what's over the top of the rocks with your new eyes. You're even going to believe there are better things to eat there with your new mouth," warned the others in the circle. "You mean this has happened to all of you too?" Grasper asked. "Of course, many times," they shouted. Look at that little circle of crabs. But Grasper couldn't help it. Some time later he began to ask himself, could there be another world out there? What will I see over the top of the rocks? Maybe there are better things to eat out there. Now he really was having the thoughts they had warned him about. Feeling some strength return to his legs, Grasper began to scramble out from under the rocks. The other crabs ran to block his path. "Don't do it!" shouted one. "These thoughts will pass." "Stay here with us," shouted another. "It isn't safe out there." The little crab began to climb. "Grasper, stop!" they cried. "No one has ever returned." Oh, wow, look at that picture. It's beautiful. But it was too late. He had reached the top. Grasper couldn't believe his new eyes. There was a whole world out there. He set off to explore. And he found lots of food. A large fish. Ooh, a shiny treasure. What is that treasure? Ooh. A hungry seagull. Uh-oh. A powerful wave. and a giant. "What are you looking at?" asked the huge crab. You're so big," stuttered Grasper. "Of course I am," boomed the giant. "And you will be too, after you've molted as many times as I have." "Me? As big as you?" cried Grasper. "But how? Where I come from, under the rocks, there are other crabs who've molted many times, but they haven't grown larger." "Do they never leave these rocks of yours?" he asked. "No, they're afraid to," replied Grasper. "Well, then, of course," said the crab. "Everyone knows a crab will only grow as large as the world he lives in, and as big as the heart inside him. You must have a big heart to live in a big world." "But they told me I must have a hard heart, not a big heart," said Grasper. "A hard heart will not grow, little one. And," he continued, "if you're not careful to let your heart grow on the inside of you, neither will your shell grow around it on the outside of you, no matter how many times you shed it." "Then a soft heart isn't dangerous?" asked Grasper. "Oh, yes, it can be," he replied. "But it is the only way a crab really can grow." That's a big crab. Although Grasper had never heard such things before, he knew that what the giant crab had told him was true. He felt he must tell the others, and carefully he set off to find them again. "Look," someone cried. "Isn't that Grasper?" "He looks bigger," said another. The little crabs quickly surrounded Grasper and asked, "What did you see?" Excitedly, Grasper began to tell them about the world beyond the safety of their rocks, the colors, the food, the fish, the treasure, the seagull, the wave, the giant crab, and what he had said. But as he spoke, the little crabs in the circle took their eyes off him, one by one. Most looked at each other. Some looked down and stirred the sand slowly with their claws. Then, before he could finish, one of them broke in and said, "Colors and treasures! Giant crabs indeed!" Grasper stopped speaking. For a moment, no one said anything. No one would look at him. "You don't believe me, do you?" Grasper demanded. "Of course we do," said one. "A crab is likely to imagine many things when he is soft. After all, it's only natural when you're frightened. Why, the last time I was soft, I thought I saw a creature as tall as the sky, walking on only 2 legs. I once thought I saw a fish as big as the sea that blew air and water out of its head," exclaimed another. The little circle erupted with laughter. "See, Grasper," said another, "stay here with us and give your shell time to harden completely. Once it does, you won't imagine those things anymore. You'll forget them and be safe again." "But I'm sure I saw," Grasper began to say. But something strange was beginning to happen. He couldn't remember clearly. Instead, he said, "That's funny. Now I'm down here again. Those things don't seem so real. Maybe I did imagine after all." "Of course you did," said one. "Of course I did," repeated Grasper. "It's only natural," reminded another. "It's only natural," repeated Grasper softly. Grasper was staring blankly at the sand in front of him. The colors, the treasure, even the giant crab faded from his mind. His shell had hardened completely. Grasper passed his time like the others now. clawing through the sand for things to eat. Then one day, a huge shadow passed over him. Grasper looked up, and his eyes opened wide. A large fish was swimming over the rocks, just like the one who had tried to eat him. "I didn't imagine that fish," cried Grasper. Suddenly he could remember again, and he began to feel quite peculiar, almost swollen inside, like he was having a stomach ache through his entire body. Then, crack! Grasper's hardened shell split open, and he was outside of it once again. His heart felt free and soft once more. Quickly, Grasper stumbled to climb up the rocks as best he could on his soft new legs. A few of the other little crabs followed him, scrambling to block his path, but it was too late. Grasper reached the top, and so did the others. "Oh my," said one. "It's beautiful," said a second. "Grasper, you didn't imagine it," said a third. Grasper and his friends left their little world between the rocks that day, and they never returned. The end. I love that story. Now, I wonder, do you think that it would be hard for you to leave the rocks if you were Grasper? And what would you say to your friends to convince them to come with you if you wanted to leave? Maybe you could even draw a picture of Grasper and all of the things that Grasper saw, like the big fish, and maybe some things that those other crabs saw too, like the animals that walked on two legs, or the animals that blew air and water out of their head. I wonder what those look like. Thanks for listening to my story. I'll see you again very soon.